see if I can share it in Telegram. I think here it is. Okay, we shared the link already. Let's start then. Martin, do you want to start?
Sure. So on Friday, I was working on the roadmap, specifically looking more into the vertical slices. I did some changes. Basically, first we wanted just to get blocks and store them somehow without doing any validation. And for the second part, we had originally syncing. But since we don't support like earlier versions of the forks, we don't really want to sync from Genesis. Instead, we want to sync from a checkpoint. I mean, that's my opinion, but yeah, we can discuss. So I changed that a little bit, and then I added some things as well. Today I was trying to, I took some of the issues with SSE to see how the flow is to solve one of those. And there were some issues with the lighthouse types fields not being public. So yeah, I'm working around that. But yeah, the more I see like what other people say or the issues other people are having with these types, I think like probably this is not the right solution. I mean, it's very hacky, and there are always new problems coming up, which is also a symptom that that's not the right path. So yeah, at some point, yeah. Now we can probably safely say that it would have been better to implement SSE ourselves. But at some point, I think we should maybe stop and rethink this. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm just like continuing with this. I'm sure there will be a workaround, but yeah, there are a lot of different things that are happening. So yeah, that's it. That's it for me.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Paul, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So lately, I've been mostly focusing on implementing the NIF, implementing execution payload and execution payload header and withdrawal as SSD types. So I'm slowly getting there because I had some problems on the Rust side. And then we managed with Thomas to fix the Rust side, and now I'm having a few problems on the Elixir side and with the tests that are failing. So I'm trying right now to find out why the tests are failing, because I'm getting some basically some how do you call that, some panics from the Rust NIF. So I'm trying to understand why. And then I've been focusing also on making documentation, so a few PRs on documentation. So yeah, that's about it. I'm trying to finalize ASAP the implementation of the SSD types, and I hope I'll be able to finish today. But I do agree with Martin that the implementation feels kind of hacky, and that it's the especially the errors are very cryptic. Like I've been lucky to have Thomas that has implemented most of them, that was here, that he had experience in a little bit in looking into these errors. I also have a little bit of experience with Rust, and I could like find a way out, but I think contributors will have a difficult time, especially if they cannot really access, for example, the knowledge of Thomas. I was able to have a call with Thomas, for example, but Thomas is not scalable in the sense that not everybody can have calls with him. So yeah, I think at one point we'll need to think about that. So I agree with Martin.
Yeah, I think that you make a very good point. I think it might be worth spending some time now, not necessarily starting that implementation, but at least having a small scoping session of to assess how much time that will take. Like, hey, if we wanted to implement this ourselves in Elixir, how much time that would take? What kind of tasks we would need to get done? Like, for instance, would we need to implement modules? Would we need to implement just a JSON parser that turned all of that into a binary representation? Like, how complex actually SSZ is? Because like the feeling that I'm getting from this is that the NIF doesn't scale, not in terms of performance, but in terms of like understandability, and that we have to build new workarounds for corner cases all the time. And I get also the feeling that SSZ is not as complex as it seems, especially for a language like Elixir, which is built for like just like building binary strings very easily and that kind of stuff. And it has binary pattern matching and that kind of things that could be used to like serialize, unserialize SSZ very easily. It sure is like a more complex task than bridging the Rust code, but it seems that bridging the Rust code is starting to get very difficult, like for all the things at the same time.
So one of the, can you mute her? One of the things I'm seeing is like we are kind of, for convenience, we wanted to reuse the lighthouse types, which we thought would make our life easier, but I think the opposite is happening because all these types come with a lot of stuff that we don't really care about, and that adds a lot of complexity. So maybe instead of that, we could just in Rust implement our structs, but instead of having like these high-level subtypes and things, it would just have the primitive SSE types. I think that could potentially, like, it's not the ultimate solution, which is implementing SSE, but maybe that could simplify our lives a lot. I don't know, Mega, what do you think about that? So instead of having like an hash 256, you would just have like a bit list or a bit vector or those primitive SSE types. And then, yeah, I think that'd probably be easier.
The thing with SSC is that it's implemented recursively. You have you serializing just a bit, like a bit vector isn't like, if you want to serialize a bit vector, it's okay, you can serialize it. But if you want to serialize the container, a container that has a bit vector and an int, for example, it's not the same as just serializing the parts. So the serializer and serializer have to take that into account. You have to like pass it some kind of schema that tells it how to interpret the byte string, or
yeah. But what I meant is, like, instead of using a lighthouse type that already exists as structs, we manually create our struct.
We might be able to do that. The thing is, well, we'd have to re-implement like the
I think in any case, like even like either way, if it's my proposal or Martin's proposal, like either way, we're talking about re-implementing the whole thing, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. If we assess that the other option is easier to code than the one that we're going with right now, like if using the lighthouse types is causing like very hard troubles on adapting that to Elixir, then we should drop that. And we can keep using the NIFs, but for our own structs, which is Martin's idea. And that sounds like a perfectly reasonable idea. But I'm not like, what I think we should do is let's take this discussion like to an issue. Let's discuss how much time would re-implementing this, but with our own structs take, and trying to see, hey, if we wanted to do this with Elixir instead, how much time would that take comparatively? Because like, yeah, well, from what I'm sensing, I think that plenty of people are having like non-trivial problems doing basic SSZ stuff. And this is not on the
Yeah,
people. Like if everyone's getting the same troubles, it's probably the issue is probably using the lighthouse types, which was also like, let's have this in mind. This was a workaround and not something that we wanted to do initially. It just was, it was just a way to speed up things. But if it's not speeding up things, we should drop it. So let's take this this discussion to an issue, and we can continue over there because it's like a very subtle one and probably will take like 20 or 30 more minutes in the weekly, and we don't want to extend that much. But yeah, we should analyze both of the ideas, try to get like at least a very broad estimation of how much those will take, and then we can take a decision. But we should like prioritize that. For instance, I can be responsible for checking out how that would go with Elixir and how difficult it would be, but someone else could at the same time take the responsibility of seeing how much that would take for our own Rust structs. Is anyone up for that task? I don't know if maybe Tomas or Martin, if either of you feel comfortable with it.
I read the SSC to speak. Maybe I can check that on the right side.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'll start an issue on that and we can continue discussion over there. Again, I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to speak badly of our current code. I think the code is great. I think the problem is that the solution that we decided we would take is problematic and that we should reassess that. Okay, anyway, we can continue that discussion afterwards. Tomas, do you want to continue with your progress?
Well, yeah. On Friday, I was mainly working on answering questions on both Telegram and the repo, general pull request reviewing, and also I started work on the failed the PR that on the PR that where I added the failing tests for one SSC container. Another reason to change to re-implement that, but well, I'll start where now I'll start work on the. I'll try to make an example, trying to implement the SSC for a single container without using lighthouse types, and based on that, try to come up with an estimate of how how much time it would take to re-implement what we have right now, but with that approach.
Hey, that sounds cool. As for me, I'm as of now, I'm writing the proposal for the APF. Will focus on that fully for today, both on the proposal and afterwards on the PowerPoint presentation for tomorrow. I think that we should probably make like our summary or like the agenda for the presentation, and then we can divide the work a little bit. And we like, unfortunately we will need to prioritize that over other stuff because we have the presentation today and tomorrow. Like the actual presentation is tomorrow. So I will write everyone afterwards when I have a draft for everything, and then we can divide the work between everybody. And yeah, I think that's it. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, just wanted to say for information that I'm gonna post it right now in the Lambda class chat, but you have maybe 1, 2, 3, let's say 20 at least SSD implementations from different teams: Prism, Teku, Nimbus, Trinity, Lighthouse, Lodestar, etc. So most of the team that actually built a client implemented SSD to be able to build on top. So I guess, as Thomas said, it's definitely viable to use already existing implementation of SSD, because it's exactly what we've done with Lib P2P. Because we don't want to waste time on that, and we actually have some more important things to implement. But if it's getting a hassle, I think it's definitely doable then, because so many teams have implemented it. It must not be that complicated. Or even some teams have implemented it multiple times. So, I mean, what I mean is not about complexity. I mean, it's more about it's doable.
I definitely agree, and it's like SSZ is a binary protocol, but it's way easier than a distributed stack like libp P2P. It's like it's like way easier than that. I think and it's also a protocol that's made to be easy to understand and simple compared to other serialization protocols. So I'm not saying it's trivial work, but I agree with you, Paul, in that like if all of these teams implemented it themselves, it shouldn't be the worst of tasks to implement it ourselves. I'm not saying it's trivial, and then we need to assess how complicated it is and how much time it will take. Mostly because it blocks other tasks, not having the SSZ working. But aside from that, I think that we should really, given the problems that we are having, we should really consider it. All right. I think that's it for me. I will leave like maybe 5 more seconds to see if someone in the chat has something to say. But if not, we can just close the meeting for today. All right. I think that's the end of the meeting today. Thank you all for joining.